Hey, this is Ramon, Channels Alpha 4, and here's another supplemental for you. So I want to talk about biblical texts and sacred texts and ancient texts and epics real quick, and then I want to get into uh, the Our Father and basically Jesus, the agony at the garden, okay? Because there's something that Bart Ehrman always says. How would you guys remember what one guy said once? Well, how do you remember what any song said? Because the thing about all these ancient texts that everybody seems to forget, even the scholars, is that all of these texts were originally sung. They were chants, they were hymns, they were songs. It's called epic poetry for a reason. It's called the Song of Songs for a reason. You would recite this in song so that everybody could hear. And this is not just true for the Bible. Everything from the Epic of Gilgamesh to the Iliad to the Odyssey to the Aeneid was performed. These were all performances. And you would sing these songs and you would memorize the songs and you would add to the songs. You would slightly change the songs. But these were songs that were sung and hymns that were sung. And even the Quran, everybody kind of knows today that that's recited in song. Very few people nowadays realize that the Bible was sung in Latin, and it is still sung today in Greek. Even in some Slavic languages, it is sung. It's not just read, it's sung. And in English, when we're doing biblical talks or we're talking about the Bible and we're just reading it, we're missing out on how powerful it is. You can really imagine how easy it would be to slip into religious ecstasy when you're singing. Just watch any strong performance. So let's think about Jesus at the garden, okay? And he's up on top of this mountain, and his disciples are a little bit, a little bit lower, but there's this like great acoustics, and he's singing at the top of his lungs, and he's singing to his Father. But what image are you seeing of Jesus? Are you seeing a guy with blue eyes and blonde hair? Are you seeing a black man? What are you seeing when you see Jesus? Because if you're seeing either one of those things, you're wrong. Jesus was a Jew, okay? And he was a very specific kind of Jew. So he wouldn't have been speaking English, okay? He was speaking Aramaic, okay? He was speaking Jewish Aramaic, okay? And he would have been singing his prayer. He would have been chanting to his Father, to who he believed was his Father. Whether you believe that Jesus was God or not, it would have been this very powerful moment where he's singing to who he thinks is his Father. Let this cup pass from me. It would have been a man, a Jewish man with bronze skin and wool hair, and he would look like this. This is the scan from the Shroud of Turin. I know that some skeptics are like, well, maybe that's not Jesus. Whatever. It's a Jewish man from that time period. There we go. So a man who looked like this. A man who looked like this, singing to his Father, to who he believed his Father. And he would be singing chanting with heartbreak and with sorrow, let this cup pass from me. And yeah, you'd remember that. And you're like, well, how do you know he was a great singer? How do you know? Okay, so I'm going to play one note, and I might have to put two copies of this up, so I might have to put one without this insert. So if you're watching this and it doesn't have the insert, it's because it got requested to be taken down. But I'm going to play just one brief note of this so you guys can see this. But go online and look up Aramaic recitations of the Gospels, specifically the Lord's Prayer, specifically the agony in the garden, the agony in Gathsemane, depending on how they have it listed, and just listen to them chant the way that Jesus would have chanted. Okay, I'm just going to play one note. Now, if you heard that over and over again as this man who you've been following for 3 years is crying and sobbing and singing his heart out, and you're like in this like weird head trip where you're like half falling asleep, and every time you wake up, you're hearing this man who you believe in sing with heartbreak and with sorrow, asking not to die. He knows the Romans are coming. He knows he's crossed every line he can cross with his fellow Jews. He knows he's crossed every line he can cross and not get executed. There is nowhere else to go. From the beginning of the Bible, from the very first words, he has been revolutionary. There is only one ending to this story. And he's saying, this is going to be hard. I knew it was going to be hard. It's going to be way harder than anything I've ever been through. And he's singing to his Father in that language, in Aramaic. And he's singing, just like how the Jews would have sung the Old Testament, just like how the Jews would have been singing in Hebrew. He's now singing in his language. And he's singing with this voice, and he's filling his voice. So when he's doing these speeches, think of him singing. Think of him performing for these audiences. He's not just speaking, he's performing. And you'll remember a good performance forever. And you'll remember the lyrics to a song that you've heard over and over again, that you've sung yourself over and over again. And so here he is, this man who you've heard sing these passionate chants, who sung the Our Father, who taught you how to sing the Our Father. And you're hearing him beg for his life to the sky on top of a mountain. He's in the sky talking to God. And he's on a mountain, surrounded by great acoustics, surrounded by trees, surrounded by pain and darkness. You're going to remember that forever. You're never not going to remember that. You're going to remember that long after you've forgotten your name. You're going to remember that moment. So when people ask, how could people remember these things? Well, because they were songs, and these emotions get passed on. The same way when you listen to someone do a cover of a song that they weren't alive for, but they put all this passion and heart into it, and that ecstasy, that emotion gets translated and transferred from generation to generation, and it's very powerful. And so you got to imagine, in the ancient world, you have these ancient religions, you have the epic poetry, the epic songs of Odysseus and of the gods, and of Gilgamesh, and of Achilles. And you have these great songs, and they're competing with each other for audiences. You have the Mesopotamians, you have the songs of Baal, you have the songs of Tiamat, you have the songs of the Enuma Elish. You have all these great songs competing with each other for dominance and for audiences. And certain songs, just like today, how certain genres, how certain artists will penetrate you and will, like, oh, I'm into this artist. I like Biggie, I don't like Tupac, or I like Tupac, I don't like Biggie. It's exactly that. I showed my age a little bit, but whatever. It's you hear a song and it connects with you. And this story stays in your heart, stays in your mind, stays in your soul, and it affects you. And the better the performer, the better the song, the better the singer, the better the chant. The 12 disciples, the chorus, his support, his chanters, okay, the background sound to him singing up front. That's what people aren't thinking about. They're thinking about Jesus sitting and talking the way that some people recite the Bible. That wasn't what he was doing. He was there singing his heart out, reciting these songs, reciting in Hebrew, the Old Testament, reciting in Aramaic, his lessons, the Beatitudes. He's singing the Our Father. He's singing in 2 different languages. And he's performing, and he's doing this like amazing sound, and you have the harmony of the chorus of the 12 disciples behind him. And they would go out together by 2, one to do the background song, one to do the front of the song, and they would recite. And it was this beautiful music that was being sung. Something to think about. Go listen to ancient Greek, to Koine Greek. Go listen to Latin recitations of the Bible, of the Old Testament, of the New Testament, of the Old Testament. Listen to the Bible in the original Hebrew being sung, being put into song form. I think it's called tomes. Go listen to Hebrewic tomes. It is beautiful. I mean, it's moving. Have you ever heard the Quran be recited in Arabic when it's sung? It's beautiful. These words that don't always fit or sound smooth in English when being spoken in the original languages sound amazing because they were sung. Imagine the Epic of Gilgamesh being sung. Imagine being on a boat with your buddies, and you're at sea and it's stormy and you're feeling sick and you're tired of fish, and somebody starts singing of Odysseus, and then the next guy over starts singing of Odysseus, and suddenly the whole boat is singing songs of the Epic of Odysseus, and you're like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna make it. I'm just like Odysseus. Right now I'm Odysseus. I'm singing this part. I am this guy. I'm singing this song, and it gets you through. It's just like how a Joni or a shanty or anything that's a sea shanty, not the singer, not a shante, like a shanty song, gets you through rough waters. When you're marching, if you've ever been in the military, I was in ROTC, it's not exactly military, but when you're doing a long march, when you're doing a 6 mile march or anything like that, I never did over 6 miles, so I wouldn't know anything beyond that. But you're doing a 6 mile march, you're doing first thing in the morning, you're on the drill team, or you're in the color guard, and you're marching and you don't want to march, and you're doing double time or triple time, and somebody starts singing, and they start singing a song that you all know, and you start hitting those lyrics, and you start going in step, and you're just going, yeah, it's gonna start feeling good. I know when I was thank you Junior Marine Corps for this. I know when I was seasick one time, to get through being seasick, when I was stuck on a 12-hour sea tour in Huatulco, Mexico, the way that I got through it is I started singing sea shanties, and I started singing every single song I learned while in ROTC. So, I mean, that's but yeah, so it works. So just imagine that you're under this stress and you're performing these songs all the time. Yes, you would remember what was said because it was sung and it was passed on from audience to audience. And you're going from Hebrew to Aramaic to Koine Greek. From Koine Greek, you're going to Latin. So you're taking these songs and you got these different competing lyricists who would write it differently because it has to work to be performed in different languages. And then you get to the English and you get to the French, and suddenly it's spoken. And suddenly those little words that don't exactly match but were important for the lyrics to work, suddenly they don't fit, because now you're like, well, why would you say that? That doesn't make sense. Because it was sung, so it had to make lyrical sense. It had to sound good. It had to have a certain sound in your voice when you're performing. I hope that explained a little bit of context for these ancient texts and for the Bible, because I know a lot of people don't really get that. So again, when you think about the Bible and you think about Jesus in particular, think about a Jewish man with a dark tan, with wool hair, who could sing, who had a choir behind him of 12 men, who would be able to recite, that means chant, the hymns and the songs of the Old Testament in Hebrew, and his new lessons that he was teaching himself, his ideas being sung in Aramaic, and him performing this. And he would get on top of a mountain, on top of a hill, where it had acoustics, so that way the whole audience could hear him perform. And these lessons, these songs, these hymns, these chants would stick with these people. It would move these people. I don't even speak Aramaic, and I can tell you, every time I hear one of these ancient songs, not for everyone, but for most of the performers, I get emotionally choked up. Okay? There are videos and videos and videos of people watching the Quran sung in the original Arabic, and yeah, it gets emotional. I remember watching at the National Memorial that Obama went to when a Muslim, I don't even know what to say, uh, pupil was requested to sing and recite a passage from the Quran. It was beautiful. You got to hear these stories being sung, and you got to imagine the emotion, the emotive nature of a song. Think about your favorite song, about your most powerful, most moving song, and now imagine if it was giving you life advice. If it was talking about circumstances that you yourself or your friend or your brother have gone through. And they're talking about the history of your family, the history of your people, and it's being sung to you. It would be moving. It would be strong and powerful. Peace, like, and subscribe. Talk to you all later. I hope that was helpful.